Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ruth Knight. I'm the Sales and Marketing Director for Northplains International. And I'm going to be very, very short and sweet today because they're telling us we have a strict 30 minutes. So literally all I am going to do, I'm going to be on hand for questions at the end if anybody's got anything about technical or implementation or change management or anything like that. But I really am going to be handing it over to Steve. Steve is obviously from Diageo. We've had the privilege of working with Steve and the Diageo crew for 15 years. So you're really going to see an evolution of what is a fantastic test case for brand asset management and MRM. And I really hope you gain an awful lot from this presentation. I'm sure you will.
Okay, thank you, Ruth. Good afternoon. Thank you for making the time today to come in here and listen to me. Hopefully, I've got a very short amount of time, as you'll know, so I'm going to skip through a bunch of slides and leave some time at the end for questions. If we run out of time, I'll be sort of outside, so the corner of this is a store where I'll actually be with Via. So if you do have questions that I don't get time to answer, then more than happy to hang around and talk to you outside. Very quickly, our agenda today. I'll talk to you a little bit about Diageo, a little bit about our brands and who we are. So you probably don't know us by our company name, but I'm sure you will by our brands. I'm going to talk to you around the workflow requirements Diageo has and the SmartBrand workflow solution that we've created to meet those needs. The evolution of the tool. What we've got now isn't what we started with, and you can see how we've built that. And then I'll talk to you about the two principal tools within our provision. Probably something you'd all be keen to learn from us is the challenges and pitfalls. Certainly I wish we had that opportunity when we set out to build this tool, and we'll summarise at the end. So, Diageo. We are led by a fellow called Paul Walsh, who's one of the city darlings. He's been in his role for 14 years since Diageo was created. This fella here is effectively my boss. He's our chief marketing officer, and he provides me with the budget to play with every year to deliver what we call SmartBrand. He started the same year as me. He started as the Guinness brand director in Great Britain. Safe to say his career trajectory has taken a little different angle than mine. Diageo operates across the world. We've got offices in 80 countries. We have over 25,000 employees. We have a retail share of the top 100 spirits brands globally of around 25%. And to get that, we spend in excess of £1.5 billion a year in marketing. So we're a big outfit. When I started, I was a sales guy, and we used to go into boozers and clubs and pubs up and down the land. And I'd say, I'm Steve from Diageo. And they'd never heard of Diageo. They'll say, Diego, or, how the hell do you pronounce this? So, once I started talking about our brands, then they knew where I come from. So these are our 14 strategic brands around the globe. Some of them I'm sure you will notice, and some you probably won't. So obviously we've got Johnny Walker, and we've got Guinness. Ciroc is our very premium end vodka. We've got a couple of whiskies in here called Buchanan's and Windsor. Buchanan's is massive in Venezuela, for instance. Windsor is huge in Korea and Asia Pac. We have around 370 brands. I couldn't fit them all onto one page, and even if I could, I wouldn't be able to because I wouldn't know a good half of them. We have so many. My favourite is Guinness, a bit of a passion, as you can probably tell by the girth. We sell 11 million units, equivalent units of Guinness annually. It's a big brand for us. I put 45 quid in brackets there just as a prompt for me to tell you that Guinness was created as a company in 1759. By a fellow called Arthur. I'm sure you're all aware of that. He signed a lease for 9,000 years. So anybody who's had the privilege of going to the storehouse in Dublin, to the brewery, as far as you can see all around the Guinness property, we pay £45 a year rent to the Dublin Council. I think they'd like to renegotiate, but we're not of a mind to do so. Our number one premium spirit globally is Smirnoff. And the number one worldwide spirit we also own, which is Johnny Walker. Baileys. Just a quick story about Baileys. 30% of the Irish dairy stock is dedicated to the production of Baileys. It's a massive, massive brand, okay? And quite a profitable one for us too. So we have lots of brands. The company's requirements around managing the assets and materials associated with these brands. Compliance is a massive thing in our business. Clearly, we have product that is sensitive, we're highly regulated, and different regulations apply in all countries. So we need something that's going to make our marketeers compliant and apply sort of our internal policies. So we're very proud of our marketing code, the Diageo marketing code. We call it the DMC. And we're very strict about it. Okay, so our CMO has been in front of select committees in the British Parliament and questioned on his DMC code. We're very proud of it, and it's something we use to protect our right to manage, to market our brands. We want to protect our IP. You know, again, our assets are exactly that. They're valuable assets to us, and we want to protect them. And particularly in an environment as well where we see so much counterfeit, we need to make sure that we're careful with what we have. We need a global solution. So I've touched on we've got offices in 80 countries, and all of those countries use this solution. So we need it to be global. We need it to drive efficiencies. Okay, we're not doing this for the love of it. We want to make money. We're a commercial operation. We want to make money. We want to save money that we spend. And it's a business critical tool, all the needs above. I've tried to visualize what the SmartBrand workflow actually does. So as I've said, there are two principal tools, but one linear process. So we've got what we call Smart Approve, and we have our asset library. So at the very start of a campaign or a marketeer's activities, they will create a project on our tool. They will then align approvers and agencies. Approvers can be tax, regulatory, IP, legal, marketing directors, corporate relations, so on and so on, depending on the scale of the operation and where we're actually executing. Once we've got all our approvers and our agencies lined up, we can then take materials and upload them for approval. And at the point where we've got these low-res materials, we invite those approvers aligned to the project to come and give their approval. Once we've got all that, then we fulfill that project. So that, in essence, is all the work done on the project by the marketeer. At that point, the onus is on the agency to then complete what we call a CUA, a commercial usage agreement. And that is the document that allows us to use our materials worldwide. So it gives us the usage rights. So every time that asset in the future is downloaded, we know where we can use it and for how long and what we can actually do to that material. We can also use that to prevent downloads in certain territories. Once we have that, the agencies are obliged contractually to upload the high-res materials, and we then gain control of them. We then bring the project owner back in momentarily to authorize the CUA, the commercial usage agreement, to make sure that what is actually written down by the agency is what we've paid for. And sometimes that doesn't match, as I'm sure you can imagine. At that point, after a bit of taxonomy, our assets go into our library, and they join, at the moment, somewhere around 26,000 live assets for onward use. For our users, at this point, they can search, share, download, and now, our most recent innovation on the site is they can start to digitally adapt some of those materials. So that's our process. We've got around 5,760 users, according to this slide, for Diageo users out of that 25,000. And we have around 8,000 external users, largely agencies, some distributors, customers, so on and so forth. So it's a relatively large tool in terms of a Diageo provision, internal at least. The course of this tool started way back in, we call it FY02, but for the sake of explaining, it's 2002, it's our financial year. We started off with a very locked down asset library. It was created by IP lawyers with the intention of keeping all these materials in place and keeping everybody away from them. So it wasn't a very healthy tool, it wasn't a friendly tool. It wasn't designed to share or for people to access. In 2004, the decision was made to add in the approval process. That took 2 years to build and implement, and a large amount of that time was taken up by lawyers arguing and creating the rules and regulations that we apply to. 2007, we began rollout. At the very start, we had under 4,000 assets on our site, and we created just over 2,000 projects. So obviously it was a phased rollout. We didn't do the whole globe in one go. Over the next 2 or 3 years, the tool was rolled out across the regions. Adoption is slow for these things and really relies, as I'll come on to say, around the support you get from the business. In 2011, we did our upgrades, so we went from this, ancient-looking site, I'd have to say now, with a taxonomy tree, pretty slow, pretty cumbersome, quite difficult to use, if I'm honest. At the time, it was out there, but clearly it dated quickly. And we launched this in 2011, and we started to see step changes in the numbers coming through the system. So in 2007, we'd added nearly 19,000 assets into there, and we'd gone to 10,000 projects globally. In terms of Diageo, that's quite a step forward, but clearly not the full distance. Last year, around this time, we launched our latest iteration, which is a lot cleaner. Really listened to our users around what they wanted in terms of an interface, an experience they wanted to have. We took a lot of influence from industry, but as I say, the biggest guidance came from our users. And our numbers have really reflected the fact that we did listen to our users. So we've got around 28,000, I said 26, it's around 28,000 live assets currently. On top of that, we've got another 60,000 archived. This year, the tool will see somewhere in the region of 230,000 downloads, and the bulk of those would be by agencies for commercial onward adaptation. And in terms of projects, we'll do around 13,500, which for us, again, it's the higher end of the 80% that we're getting. We still see there are still some areas we need to knock over, and they're resisting for a variety of reasons, be it broadband or historical. So it's a successful journey, but clearly that journey continues. The SmartBrand tool, some of the challenges are clearly adoption. Okay, so where you've got a mandated tool, people will bulk against it. So be it an expenses site where people have to go and claim their expenses, be it a room booking site that we, believe it or not, we have in Diageo. All of these things, if they're mandated, people will naturally resist, and clearly adoption is an issue. Local sponsorship we found to be quite challenging as well, that different marketing directors may have a different agenda, and if they're not lined up, it can be incredibly difficult to get this type of tool away. Perception and baggage can be a problem, so I showed you that previous iteration of the site, that a lot of people remember SmartBrand to be this or SmartBrand to be that, and that's really painful because they still resist to this day, not appreciating the tool has moved on. And in Diageo, our culture has always been that there's a lack of consequence to non-compliance. So you had to be really naughty to get in trouble at Diageo, and that remains the way it is, and that's a good thing. We've got a spectacular culture in our business, and the fact that our shares have risen 31% in the last 12 months should tell you that works. But it does have the risk attached to it that if there are no teeth, then you really are struggling. Some of our wins, it's a global way of working, as I've said. Last year or the year before, we took our whole reserve business, so all the high-end brands, and planted them in Singapore. And those people came from all across the world. They all knew how to use SmartBrand. They had this way of working. Our marketing structure was already in place. We clearly see over 1,000 projects a month, and with each of, probably not with each, but with many of those projects, we see countless interventions. And those interventions could be as small as a missing trademark icon, right up to you run the risk of insulting an entire nation, for instance. And believe me, that has happened. It protects our users. We have had instances where people have lost their jobs because they've really, really gone against the marketing code. And as I said, it has to be serious to get to that point, and clearly those were. If those people had used SmartBrand, they wouldn't have lost their jobs. So it protects our business, and it protects our reputation. I love to say it protects our right to market our brand, or our ability to market our brands at very least. Our library, one of the biggest challenges is decoupling agencies. So our agencies, some of our agencies in the past have thought that by giving us our materials, they lose control over them. and it's a potential revenue stream that they've lost. And we've had to fight agencies along the way. They are contracted to provide our materials to us, but it can be a struggle. We're in a pretty good place right now because they've learned that we don't do this to clip their budget. We do it to take control over our materials, which can then reduce those revenue streams that can be spent on other more effective channels. Perceived easier solutions, there's always somebody who's got a preference for something else, and you'll never meet everybody's needs. But generally, where people find an easier solution, it tends to be non-compliant in terms of our needs. Language challenges, these tend to drive local solutions, and I think largely in terms of Asia Pac with these, where they'll go onto our library looking for a Johnny Walker asset, but it's entirely in English. And if you only speak Korean, or you speak very poor English and you're Korean or Chinese or from the Philippines or whatever, it can be very difficult, and that is an issue that we're addressing, certainly in terms of key elements of the site and our training materials. Our wins, as I've said, we'll see 230,000 downloads this year. We saw downloads last year in 147 countries. We have complete transparency over our usage rights. So anything that comes from our site should never land us in trouble with the law. And we own the code to this site. So we partner with VIA to build this. They're very responsive to our needs. And sometimes they have to manage my expectations and my desires. But they're very good at doing that. But we own the code, and that's very important for Diageo. So on to the challenges and pitfalls. I've broken this down to 4 areas. So conception, build and development, embed and manage. So at the conception of this, it's absolutely critical for senior sponsorship. Okay, the days of tightening budgets that we're in, the business case we would have to put together now to build this would be huge. And without that senior sponsorship at board level, we wouldn't get past the word go. We have a company mandate behind this, and we had to secure that before building this tool. As you can imagine, things like this don't come cheap, initially at least, because of all the legal works and the build and etc. And without that company mandate from word go that marketing will use this tool, it will be deployed, it will be a global tool, then again, it's going to be a real struggle. During the build and development, I think that's probably the most important word on the screen, scope. It's the easiest thing in the world to have project creep. And we find that even now when we're asked to develop and change things. Absolutely critical that you define your scope and you actually stick to it, because if you don't, it's going to go off in every which way but. I've put in want or need. A marketeer will always tell you what they want, they'll rarely tell you what they need. And it's defining between the two is absolutely critical. And whilst it's important to listen to your users, certainly around the experience that they're going to have on the site, it's also critical to understand what their bosses want in terms of reporting and etc. Whilst I'm on reporting, I haven't put it in here as well, but probably a key bit of advice is start with reports when you're building a tool of this ilk. So to actually go back and retrofit reports into the build can be quite tedious, can be quite expensive. If you start with those reports up front and clearly define them, you'll find that the build is significantly easier at the end of the day. Managing expectations is always key. There'll be a plethora of companies knocking on our door every day saying we've got the wonderful piece of technology that can do this, and we'll be asked why can't we do that. It might be that there's, I don't know, £500,000 gone into the R&D behind that single nugget of development, and much as I'd love to absorb all that wonderful stuff, I've only got a defined budget, and I can't go above that clearly. When embedding, agree your targets with stakeholders. It's no good to march into a territory and say this is what you're going to do and this is how it's going to be done. It has to be agreed with the stakeholders. And stakeholders can be marketing directors, they can be much more junior than that, but it's about having those out there and responding to them. Strong communications plan clearly and talented change managers. If you imagine a company the size of Diageo switching in the period of really around about 4 years from email approval or or taking a piece of paper to your boss's desk and getting approval that easily and that quickly into this full auditable work stream and process is a heck of a challenge. And without that change management, without really spending as much time on that almost as the build, then there's a chance of failure. I've got light multilingual training. When the tool was first launched, and I'm delighted to say I wasn't part of this, the training in them days would take a whole day. We now train in 45 minutes. So taking a whole day of somebody's time, I think probably after the first hour you've lost them. You're certainly not going to get them back after lunch, and you're doing more damage than good. So it's about a light touch in the training, covering the necessary stuff, and we use a lot of video training in our process. And if you can deliver that in a local language, then absolutely critical as well. The day-to-day management of the site, it is responding to your users. It's not necessarily giving them what they want, but it is responding to them, listening to them, and almost using your users as collaborators. So certainly within a company like Diageo, we have some of the world's best marketeers, and we'd be mad not to listen to those people into how they want their tool to perform, how they want it to look, how they want it to react, and indeed how to merchandise it. Reporting is key. So like any big business, I have a boss that says how much has it cost me, how much has it saved me, and without those reports, clearly I wouldn't be able to do that. And again, I go back to this point, define your reports early, because they really will save you a mountain of work. And the final thing is we keep improving it. So it was said to me very recently that 5 years ago we had something that was leagues ahead of many of our competitors and peer group in what we had. And we're still ahead. We're not as far as ahead as I'd like to be, but we are still ahead. And we are that ahead because we keep adding to it. We keep innovating. We keep improving. So obviously the social networks that have appeared in the past few years, internal business social networks, how do we incorporate them? How have we incorporated web to print and all that kind of stuff? So it has got to keep moving on. So to summarise, I appreciate this has been really quick. The tool helps us be compliant, which is massive in our business. It's secure, it has to be secure, and it protects our assets. It's a completely global solution, and the success of it is it's largely embedded in our business now. I think I've got probably 3 reasonable sized markets to knock over, and we have 100% of Diageo using this tool. And as I say, it's a living tool. It changes every day, it improves every day. Where it goes next is very much to the demands of our business. We have lots of ideas for it, and hopefully this time next year I can come back and tell you what we've done. But in the meantime, that's me. What I've got actually here is a few slides to give you an understanding of the site. This is the library. We start with this without any images and give people some tips, because what we find is that people rarely use the filters. You really have to call it out, and we've had to use folders because they're so indoctrinated by Microsoft that we've had to go down that path. Once they've done a search, they can build search filters up here, or use the filters on the right hand side. The images are portrayed. This is a Smart Approved project where you can see we've created it. The creator's been uploaded. They've got approval. This is full approval. This is approval with notes. What else have we got? This is one of our internal document sharing sites. We call them engagement tools. This is a Smirnoff Global brand team site where they share their materials with the local marketing teams. It's a very quick and succinct way of sharing content and being on message.